most of my clients come in and they'll say, every time I tell somebody that I'm depressed or scared or anxious, all they say is, you have so much money. What in the world are you sad about? So not looking at this population as how in the world do they have problems? They're multimillionaires. How in the world does she have a terrible marriage? She's married to a billionaire. That's a big thing, is the realization that money does not buy them happiness. Sometimes it buys them bigger problems. So allowing them to be really, really open and really, really honest is a really big deal.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. And welcome to the podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and this is episode number 341 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Glad you're with me. Glad you're with me on this journey, as I like to say, and hope you'll take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. So I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Ryan Forbes. And Ryan was introduced to me by one of my good friends and colleagues, Lisa Mustard of the Therapy Show. And Ryan has a really unique niche that he works with, and I think you might find it really interesting. Ryan describes it as working with highly driven individuals. And what that means is just mainly people that are like CEOs, or people that might even be famous, or people that are in kind of the upper echelons of society. And he tells his story about how he kind of stumbled upon this niche and how he began working with this type of individual. So I think it was a great interview, and it was just really fascinating to me just to think about a niche in terms of socioeconomic status. I think we traditionally tend to think about, I think most of us are programmed to kind of work with people that are struggling, or people that are maybe dealing with poverty and those kinds of things. But looking at the other end of the spectrum, they're people too, and they also need our services. And so it takes I think it's a real interesting spin on working with this niche. So stay tuned to that. Before we get to that, though, I'd mentioned Lisa Mustard, and Lisa is part of the Psychcraft network, which this podcast is part of that. Started the Psychcraft network a couple of years ago, just really to build a community around those of us in this space of mental health consulting, also self-help, and all of those types of topics. Realized that there were a lot of us that were really wanting to connect and network with each other and learn from each other. So I started the Psychcraft network. And the other thing that has come out of that is that I get a lot of inquiries from other people about how to start a podcast. So if you are thinking about starting your own podcast, or maybe would be interested in joining the Psychcraft network, I've put together a PDF. We put together a PDF that just goes over the basics of starting a podcast and things that you need to think about. And so that's a free download. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/psychcraft PDF, you can find that and download it for yourself. Again, that's practiceoftherapy.com/psychcraft PDF. And you'll find links here in the show notes and the show summary to access that. But it's a freebie, and I invite you to go over and check it out. And also, as you've heard me mention on other episodes, I'd love for you to check out my friend Ashley's online store. It's called Mental Health Wear TN. And what you'll find there are just loads of cool designs just around mental health recovery, addiction recovery, but also T-shirts and bling for our different professions within the mental health field. So if you're interested in finding the perfect LMFT T-shirt or the perfect LCSW T-shirt or LPC T-shirt, she's got them. So be sure and check it out. mentalhealthweartn.com. And when you order for the first time, you can get a discount on your order. So be sure and check it out. And also, before we get to my conversation with Ryan, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft Network, along with some words from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hi, Dawn Gabriel here. If you don't know me yet, I'm the person behind Soul Care for Therapists podcast, which is part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. The Psychcraft network is a collaboration of independent podcasters focused on helping people live more meaningful and productive lives. This network of podcasts provides both self-help and business building resources to create an impact in the world and change people's lives. I'm so proud to be a part of this network. And if you haven't discovered Soul Care for Therapists podcast, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd love for you to join me as we explore the layered inner world that comes with being a therapist, an entrepreneur, and just plain human. I invite you to intentionally tune in holistically to your body, mind, and spirit in order to build a sustainable business and fulfilling lifestyle. We dive in to what it looks like to grow your business. We also look at how soul care, authentic community, and spiritual practices can help you prevent burnout and live a life you love. Join me as we allow the sacred to intersect with our work.
Ready to upgrade your practice from a rusty bicycle to a shiny new sports car? Buckle up, because TherapyNotes is here to turbocharge your journey. It's the comprehensive practice management system you've been craving, equipped with everything you need to navigate patient records, schedule seamlessly, host remote sessions, craft detailed notes, and tackle insurance billing with ease. And guess what? It's your trusty sidekick, available whenever and wherever duty calls. Picture having more quality time with your clients, all thanks to this digital assistant that never clocks out. Here's the kicker. It's Gordon approved, so you can trust it's the real deal. Bid farewell to paperwork headaches and embrace a new era of efficiency and top-tier care. Ready to level up your private practice game? Swing by practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and punch in promo code GORDON for 2 months on the house. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast again. And I'm happy for you to get to know today Ryan Forbes. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Glad
good
to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And Ryan, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yeah. So my name is Ryan Forbes. I'm an LPC in Louisiana. I'm also licensed in Texas and Florida. So basically, where I landed was I've realized that working with highly driven and high achieving clients is kind of a group of people that in a lot of ways has not necessarily been ignored, but a lot of people don't realize how much of a minority they are in the world and how much this truly is a need area that LPCs and other mental health professionals, I think, have largely, it's become an underserved population, which is something that I find interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you've done, as we were chatting about at the beginning before we started recording, you've done some presentations just around this whole idea of working with highly driven clients. And shout out to our friend Lisa Mustard, who kind of helped us get connected. But what are some things that come to mind for you, and just what are the things that you like for people to know about that particular niche?
Well, so the reason I started, this all started when I had a client, and it was around 2016, 2017. I had a client come in, and she told me, she's like, I'm attractive, I'm wealthy, I'm successful, I'm the youngest CEO of this company in history, and I'm miserable. She's like, there's nobody I can talk to. Everybody is a potential client or a potential customer, or they work for me. She's like, I have nobody that I can talk to. Everybody that I talk to is not real with me because they don't want to upset me. They don't want to hurt a potential relationship. So that's kind of where this started, was with that client. And then since then, it's kind of grown to where I have a lot of clients. I have a client that's, in the high six-figure kind of lifestyle, and he's terrified. If his business ever fails, he loses his marriage, he loses his wife, he loses his family, because he realizes that all of that relationship is transactional and based on his income.
Mm.
So that's really how I got started. It just kind of grew from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Well, so what are you, besides just feeling isolated, what are the other kind of issues that you notice with that particular population or the particular niche?
yeah, so there's a lot of isolation, extremely high anxiety, withdrawn from a lot of folks. They tend to be extremely hard on themselves. I asked so to conduct this presentation that I did, I spoke to over 45 people that fit what I call high achieving and highly driven clients. And a number of the things that I heard from, particularly from the more artistic style, like the musicians and the actors and things like that, was that they have a huge inferiority complex. And a lot of their success is not driven by the desire to succeed, it's driven by the desire not to fail. And a lot of making up for it. I spoke to a Grammy Award winning musician in Nashville who talked about, a lot of his drive was to make up for what his parents told him he wasn't was when he was a kid. And he's 50 years old now and telling me, he's like, Ryan, I realized I'm never going to make up for that. But it's a constant need of reassurance and constant need, to feel like they're better than what they were before.
Right.
So a lot of inferiority.
Yeah. Yeah. As you have kind of developed this niche, where are your clients coming from, I guess is a good question. It's I'm sure all over, it sounds like.
Yeah. So right now I have a couple right where I live in Louisiana. I have a couple in New Orleans, two from Orlando, and then I'm working on getting my license in Oklahoma, and then I'll have one that's moving to Oklahoma shortly.
Yeah.
So they kind of, most of the referrals I would say come from other clients, that you usually see that they usually self-refer from other people or refer from other people.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't tend to find me just online. So.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, yeah. So tell us more about how you said a little bit about it, but how did you get interested in this particular niche, and just how, because I don't know that I've ever run into anybody else that works specifically with highly driven clients. And I'm sure you work with other folks as well, but I mean, just,
Right.
yeah. What got your interest in all of this?
Well, a number of years ago, like after I had that conversation with that client, I kind of started researching it and kind of, so I got introduced to words like ultra high net worth individuals and people in that frame of thinking, and realizing how much of a minority they must be in to be in the 1% or the 5% or even the 10%. So I started researching and started looking into it. I met a therapist in New York that this is his whole niche, is he works with ultra high net worth individuals. When I spoke to him a couple months ago, or I'm sorry, about 6 months ago, and the way that he described what he has is, most of his clients are CEOs, celebrities, business owners, and minor royalty. And at the time that we were talking, he was charging $1,000 an hour to see the clients. He developed what he would call walk and talk therapy. So this is Clay Cockrell, who works in New York. He lives in Kentucky.
I know Clay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to him, and he just had a completely different way of looking at the world. And he was a fascinating individual, and talking about how these people have the same needs as everybody else is. It's just on different scales. They have $1 million problems versus $100 problems. And if they're not doing well, their business goes down. And if their business goes down, other things go down. We're not, for the most part, for the other 80% of us or 90% of us, we're worried about our everyday jobs. They're not just worried about their everyday jobs. They're worried about if their business fails, they have 1,000 employees that no longer have jobs. Or, their whole lifestyle is gone. If I lost my income today, I could go find a regular Joe job and replace it. If you're a multimillionaire and you lose your job, it's hard to find a regular Joe job to replace that income. So their stress level is wildly different. Yeah. So this may help explain it a little bit. So the way I developed this presentation was I talked to 45 different people through all over the world about this population. So people that I identified myself. So this was my own definition. I may be wrong, but of what I consider high achieving, highly driven clients. I spoke to 45 different people. So I spoke to professional athletes. I spoke to professional musicians, a number of mental health professionals, lots of CEOs and business folks. And I developed it more from the idea of not necessarily what do I see, but what do these folks want to know? So one of the questions that I asked is, how did you get where you are? Like, what made you successful? And then what does your success mean for therapy? Like, what do you want therapists to know about how you work and how you're different than other people? So that was kind of how I developed the presentation. It took me 2 or 3 years, but my first conversation with Clay was probably 2018, 2019. And it just kind of rolled from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, what do you see as the biggest struggle points besides, I guess, maybe being hard on themselves, inferiority, kinds of things that you notice with this population? Is it that much different than what we see in regular folk, so to speak?
I think it's probably very similar in what you see with regular folks per se, but it's just on a wildly different scale. And also their expectations are much higher. So a lot of these people, they expect tremendous things out of themselves. They've spent most of their lives, most of their adult working lives, at least, telling people what to do and how to behave and how to react. So how does that apply to therapy? And the overarching frame or thing that I heard from, CEOs, I spoke to an NFL referee and, like people that had high achieving jobs. And the overarching phrase or thing that kept on coming up was, you're the expert. Be bold, be confident. And we need direct. We don't need a diagnosis. We just it's a problem solving. We need, like, a lot of these folks were not really interested in the quote unquote touchy feely. They were more interested in, my wife's breaking down, my husband's breaking down, it's hurting my family, and this in turn is hurting my income. And let's see if we can get this fixed so we can move on. So it's a lot of the same issues, but it's just larger scales. Their downtime equates to profit loss for stakeholders.
Yeah.
Things like that. It's just bigger scales.
Right. If somebody were thinking of maybe trying to go into this niche, what would be ways for them to begin doing that?
So a lot of the people that I talk to, their suggestions were talking to other people, like letting them know that you're seeking this type of client, that you kind of are looking to be almost more of a consultant kind of role. You're not working with the expectation that there's something wrong with them, but you're looking to see, hey, can we help you improve? Can we have, like, can your marriage get better or your business get better? And if counseling helps that, let's give that a try. There's a lot of conversation of not looking for typical places to advertise. So like a friend of mine was telling me that a very successful friend of mine was telling me that he wouldn't use me as a therapist. And I was like, why is that? And he's like, because you're a Walmart therapist. I was like, okay, keep talking. And he's like, you advertise the same place that everybody else does. You charge the same thing everybody else does. He's like, I wouldn't work with you because you're not different. You're just an average Walmart therapist. So we talked about it. I was like, okay, where should I advertise? He's like, you should look for private plane advertisements or advertise in private plane magazines. Look for your fashion week magazines. Look for the websites that are more dedicated to wealth and success and business driven things, not towards the populace, but get into more, I don't want to call it elite, that sounds wrong, but more, like business driven magazines or wealth driven magazines was a lot of his advertisements or his advertisement suggestions.
Right. So, yeah, and thinking about that, what would be putting on my marketing hat and just thinking about, for therapists, for us to be able to get our message out there, we need to be able to kind of put into words how we help people. What's the transformation that we can create for people? So as you think about working with this particular niche, what is the transformation that you offer for them that they're looking for?
So the one thing that I see more than almost anything with clients like this is that it gives them a place that they can talk where there's not a lot of judgment. There's not a lot of he said, she said. It's just a completely open, non-biased, non-judgmental listening ear. That I think is the first thing that clients can do or a therapist can do for a client like this. Because like I said at the beginning, the one woman that I started with, very much, there's nobody I can talk to. Everybody's a client. Everybody's a customer. They work for me or they could work for me. There's nobody I can talk to. And that was a big deal. So confidentiality is huge. Almost every person, I'm pausing because I'm trying to think if there was anybody. I don't think there was a single person. I think everybody said that they would prefer the offices be not marked and to not say, Ryan Forbes counseling office, but they would prefer it just as much be an unmarked office or an unknown name. So the confidentiality is huge. Secrecy is huge. Anything that can be used against them, because many of these clients I have a number of clients that are political, and anything that can be used against them politics wise could look negative. So that's a big deal. Like super secrecy is something that needs to be done. They aren't looking for diagnosis. That was a big statement for every single one of them. Because they're like, well, for their benefit and the therapist's benefit, they're typically going to pay cash. So there's not an insurance need to diagnose. So that's helpful. And they don't want the diagnosis either.
Right.
Most of it is goal driven. They're not going to be there a long time. This is happening. This is going on. And once we get over this hurdle, I'll see you in a year whenever I get another hurdle. But it's lots of hurdle driven things.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And it sounds like really with this particular niche too, is that it is, at least in my mind, akin more to coaching with people about things rather than doing kind of deep dig in kind of therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. But there's one thing that's important to say to that. So with most of these clients that I have worked with similar to that, what has happened a lot of times is they realize 4, 5, 6 sessions in that there are other things that they want to talk about and there are other things that they want to dig into. So a lot of folks that are in this, their life is it has to be stable, and so not to over exaggerate the statement, but they don't have time for a breakdown. So they don't want to open up wounds that they can't close back up quickly. Once they realize that they can trust you and that their business will still function if they're in counseling, and that their family's not going to fall apart, then they do want to go into the deeper issues. But it takes a lot of getting stability, and that everything else is going to be okay. And again, that's not different than any other client. It's just based on their level of how much need they have. And if their life falls apart, quote unquote, their fallout is really big.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And so I would think with high profile clients like that, they've already kind of conditioned themselves to be kind of wary of who to trust, and knowing who they can talk to and who they can share information with and what information they can share. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of them, I had one mid conversation the other day stop and say, wait, I can't tell you this is a trade secret, or this is part of a gag order, or this is part of, and one of the fascinating things is I tell them, like, this is maybe the only place that you can say that. This is maybe the only place that you can be open about X, Y, and Z. I don't particularly care about that you're going to sell this widget or that widget. It makes no difference to me. But I see why you don't want to tell your competitors or your coworkers, but that's not my world. So being that is a really big deal for them, because like I said earlier, everybody I spoke to, one of the frustrations was all their friends are either competitors, colleagues, people in the field. When you work 80, 90, 75 hours a week, your friend zone is pretty small. And the people that understand you are coworkers. Well, you can't have open conversations with all your coworkers.
Right.
I had one man tell me that, you don't want to complain to your employees about how hard it is to start a business, because they're the ones that are working for you, so it's a pretty marginalized group up here that they can talk to.
Right.
So being that person is really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ryan, this is fascinating stuff, and I've got to be respectful of your time. What are some kind of parting thoughts or things that you would want people to know more about with all of this?
I think that the most impactful thing of all these conversations was how much this group of people feel judged by the rest of the world. And that is something that I think therapists are really guilty of. So most of my clients come in and they'll say, I feel bad about doing this. And every time I tell somebody that I'm depressed or scared or anxious, all they say is, you have so much money. What in the world are you sad about? Why can't you? And, so not looking at this population as how in the world do they have problems? They're multimillionaires. Or how in the world does she have a terrible marriage? She's married to a billionaire, and that's a big thing, is the realization that money does not buy them happiness. Sometimes it buys them bigger problems.
Right.
So allowing them to be really, really open and really, really honest is a really big deal. So.
Right. Well, this has been great, Ryan. How can folks get in touch with you if they want to find out more and talk with you about any of this?
I would love it if they would just email me. So it's just Ryan, RYAN, at RyanForbesLPC.com.
Okay. Well, Ryan, great to have you with me. I hope we can chat again before too long. Again, a big thanks to Ryan for being on the podcast. And that was, that conversation was really fascinating to me. And just thinking about, the niche of working with highly driven people, or those that might even be considered ultra rich, and recognizing that we're all human beings and we all face similar dilemmas. And I think sometimes it's easy to judge one end of the spectrum or other. And I think this is a reminder that we're all kind of in this together and we all have our different challenges. And the world needs mental health providers now more than ever. And so maybe this has given you some ideas of things that you might want to consider with your own practice and just your own niche and the people that you serve. So, be sure to check out Ryan's things. Again, you'll find the links here in the show notes and the show summary. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're considering maybe starting a podcast or already have a podcast and would like to build some community around that whole endeavor, I'd love for you to check out the Psychcraft Network. And we've got a free PDF that we've put together. And you can find that at practiceoftherapy.com/psychcraftpdf. And also you can just go over to psychcraftnetwork.com and check out all the great podcasts that are in the network. Got a lot of great people there. And so be sure and check it out. And also big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers, and they are who I use in my practice. I couldn't do without them, and they are constantly improving all of the things that are within that platform. And it's really pretty impressive with the things that they're doing. So be sure and check them out. You can go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And also be sure and use that promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So come back for next week. We've got some great guests lined up as we're winding down the summer. Well, I don't guess we really are. We've got another month of summer with the month of August, I guess. But anyway, it seems like the year is flying by. But anyway, I hope that you're enduring the heat that we've been having across the country. I know here where I live in East Tennessee, it's been pretty brutal, approaching the 100-degree mark, which I know in other parts of the country that's not unusual. But for us here in the Appalachian Mountains, when it gets that hot, it's pretty phenomenal. So anyway, take care, folks, and we'll be with you again next week for another episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.